Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. It's Cynicalex, and today we're testing out War Tiger. But first I want to show you something. We're going to use War Tiger here on stage 40 Proxima, which is not the highest stage of all time. And we're not going to use strikers. We're just going to play him with support and a regular sort of free-to-play leadership in Goliath, which is 45% physical damage or physical attack. And you can see the damage is not bad. It's kind of bursty. The survivability is pretty good. But you do need to kite, and you want to try to proc on the 5th skill, but we're not having the best time doing that. So alternatively, you can proc on either the 4th skill or the 2nd skill. Now we're going to cancel 2 into 5 here to try to get the proc happening just a little bit earlier. We missed it. But generally speaking, his 4th skill is really good for the self-buff in terms of buffing his damage. His 5th skill is essential for doing damage and for protecting him because it has immunity for 6 seconds. And then his 4th skill has... his 4th skill also has an iframe. And then his 2nd skill actually has decent damage to combo off with the 5, but you need to wait until he does that slash. So you got to watch the animation on his 5th skill, and he will do sort of a slash after he slams the ground. After he does that slash, you can cancel the 5th skill. So if you're trying to time his damage properly with any kind of obelisk or any kind of CTP, that's what you want. We've been here for just over a minute, and we've really missed every single proc. This is the first proc that we hit properly. I think the first proc we hit pretty well. So you can see the damage is like okay. But you're probably thinking to yourself, Cynicalex, I don't think you can clear this stage. And you might be right. I actually might run out of time. So stage 40, he's running out of time. Seems pretty trash, right? Okay, so let's investigate War Tiger just a little bit more, because War Tiger, he sort of suffers from the inflation of damage lately from the striker changes. Now, before you hit the nuclear codes here, I'm not saying that the striker change is bad, but what I'm saying is a lot of times now we play characters with the striker changes, and characters who have high damage but no all defense down, no way of sort of manipulating the boss's vulnerabilities. Like War Tiger, he has no all defense down, he has no elemental damage, he has no elemental defense down. He ends up looking subpar. He ends up looking like a Gorilla Man or Swordmaster, but Swordmaster actually has all defense down. So yeah, that's basically what's going on. And so I want to show you guys the build now and then go back in with strikers and show you that it's going to look a lot better. Now, at the end of the day, it's going to be up to you whether you want to build this character. We're obviously at the point in Marvel Future Fight where you don't have to build every single character. But what are the pluses of building War Tiger, aside from the fact that he's free and you might have already used a Mega Tier 2 selector on him? Well, like I said, his 5th skill has 6 seconds of immunity on a 9-second cooldown, so that's pretty easy. You just have to stall or sort of dodge for about 3 seconds. And it's got pretty decent damage with a large AoE. It's got all these other effects, but they don't apply to World Boss, so they're not that important right now. Maybe if there was a new game mode that came out where these effects like Stun, Fear, and Bind actually mattered. Right now it's just for Shadowland, so he'd be very, very good for Shadowland. Merciless Hunt gives him a very nice buff for 10 seconds. So you're constantly rocking 35% more all attack. You're constantly rocking 25% crit rate. So you can use that to sort of build him with less crit rate, but it'll still get way higher. So with the buff, I'm going to jump up to almost 70% crit rate automatically. And then 3, 2, and 1 are vanilla skills, which is pretty disappointing. In 2019 or 2020, I should say, we've gotten used to skills having lots of text. And so with characters that don't have any text, like let's say Gwenpool or other characters like that, or Quicksilver, you expect them to hit really hard. And so that's what you expect from War Tiger because he doesn't have any effects. He has 1 self buff and he has 1 defensive buff, the immunity, and that's it. The only other really good thing about War Tiger as a free character is that he has a very strong heal. This is rare for free characters to get a heal this good. This is usually reserved for premium characters or native tier 2 characters a la, Deadpool's heal is better, Wolverine's heal is better, but similar types of heals. And then his tier 2 passive, like all of the other Guardians, Warriors of the Galaxy, is Super Armor All Defense. So you don't need Guard Break immunity unless you're planning to use him for PvP. And then he has some skill and bonus damage. The rest of the build is pretty straightforward. It's a crit damage 160 proc, so it's just very run of the mill. We've got Power of Angry Hulk stage 6. I recommend Power of Angry Hulk for all of the Warriors of the Sky. And then we got some Urus here for physical damage, and we're just trying to cap out the cooldown. And we can see almost capped cooldown and ignore defense with 42 and 170 on the crits. But now let's jump back into some content and see how much harder he hits now that he has strikers to just give him a little push. So now let's take a look. We're just going to add 2 strikers, 1 for all defense down and 1 for mind control, because we don't need any sort of accumulation, so we don't have to worry about Proxima hitting us or not hitting us. So her not hitting us because of Rachel is going to, well, for the most part, is going to improve our survivability and means that we can basically face tank her 24/7 because of the healing that he has on his passive. He becomes a very easy character to play because of the fact that you don't have to worry about any of that, stuff interrupting you. And so you can see that his damage does start to look a lot more respectable, and you're kind of like, damn, that's not bad actually for a free character that has, sort of auto healing. He starts to look decent because Weapon Hex is providing him with just a little bit of all defense down. Now, Weapon Hex is the most expensive all defense down character in the game. I actually missed my proc there. She's the most expensive all defense down character in the game because she's premium, but there are ways of getting her in the game now. Let's try procking on 4 and see what the damage looks like. Sadly, the damage on 4 is actually not that good. But Weapon Hex actually doesn't provide you with 100% all defense down because she doesn't end up hitting the boss enough times to stack 100%. But you can see here, in less time, we've done a couple more bars at least. So the damage actually starts to, sort of twofold or threefold just by giving him a few strikers. So for those of you that are looking at this and wondering, well, Cynicalex, this is all great, but I don't have Weapon Hex, that's okay because you can use other strikers to your advantage that you do have, and it could still end up making War Tiger look better than he is. Now, the only downside to this discovery, or the only downside to this rule for someone like War Tiger, is that he's not going to be good against bosses that have debuff. So War Tiger at level 60, unless maybe you give him like a CTP of Rage or something like that, he's probably not going to be good against Galactus or Master Mold because they have debuff immunity, so you can't even use all defense down on them. He's also going to struggle against Thanos in the second phase of the fight. So it does make him a little bit more limited in the content that he can complete. He also probably won't be able to do high-level Shadowland either because he doesn't have any all-defense down, even all-defense down that doesn't have immunity. Because characters that have all-defense down without immunity, that won't work against World Boss, but it will still work in Shadowland, which does allow them to push higher. So a character, for example, like, we've talked about him before, he's not a great character, but Rocket. Rocket's not that good for World Boss, but he can actually perform better in Shadowland than you might think, in the 60s into the 70s, maybe even the 80s, because he has 40% all defense down for 3 seconds that does apply to the enemies in Shadowland that doesn't apply to World Bosses. So if War Tiger had that, I think he'd be very, very good for Shadowland, maybe into the 80s or 90s, because he has he has above average base damage, but because he doesn't have any of the all defense down of any kind whatsoever, he's not going to be able to do GBR well, and I'm guessing. He won't be able to do that high in Shadowland. I mean, he can still go pretty high, maybe 50s, maybe 60, maybe 70, but he won't be able to go too much higher than that. And then I suspect that he won't be good against Thanos and other types. But now, here's the cool thing. I made a striker chart for you guys where I listed out the strikers, and I listed out which one of the strikers hit when you attack versus when you get attacked. And that's part of the reason why I chose Goliath, because I think a lot of you guys have Goliath built up because of his leadership, but actually you can use him for a striker with someone like War Tiger who heals. Now, this is a little bit of a ghetto build, so to speak, but we're going to bring in, well, actually, no, let's not bring in Crescent. We're going to bring in, let's say, Wasp. We're just going to do this for the attack buff and the all-speed buff, and then these strikers are maybe a little bit too expensive, so we're going to bring in strikers that maybe are a little bit cheaper. So we're going to bring, like I said, Goliath. Goliath is going to apply a... Where is Goliath? He is going to apply all defense down, but it's only when you get hit. He's going to apply minus 35% for 7 seconds. And you can also do the same thing with Cable, although, again, Cable's a little bit more of an expensive character to build up, specifically to use as a striker. But when you have a character like this that heals, you can face tank and you can take damage. We're also going to use Dr. Voodoo. Dr. Voodoo is going to mind control for 5 seconds once in a while. Now, this is not necessarily a good idea if you want to get hit with Goliath and Cable, so you might want to test this out without them, or you might want to use someone like Phantom X, who only has 2 seconds of all defense down, or mind control, or someone like Molten Man, who has 2 seconds of paralyze. This will give you a little bit of protection, but it will still allow you to get hit once in a while to trigger Goliath and Cable and other strikers like that. So in this case, you might still be able to emulate the damage and the output, and you might be able to make more use out of this character who you otherwise might not have any use for, with characters that you're just building up either for leaderships or characters that you're building up, let's say, for epic quest rewards. So we're gonna get hit. He's gonna drop the Goliath's gonna drop the all defense down, and here we go. And we want to get hit. The iframe on 4 is going to reduce that, but there we go. Cable's dropping the all defense down. We're getting hit, but we're healing. And you can see the damage is there. Again, it's not going to be, it might not be as good as Weapon Hex, but it is going to be good in a way. And he's going to take advantage of that, along with being able to use his immunity skill, which is not an iframe. You can see this actually works. This actually works. And this allows players who don't have insane builds to still make use of characters like War Tiger, and actually come out with good DPS. And actually, we cleared this faster. Pretty wild. I think we're clearing it faster because Cable deals more damage than Weapon Hex and Scarlet, or sorry, Rachel Summers do. But we actually cleared that faster with a lower leadership, with more free-to-play friendly strikers. Cable's not really, well, Cable's free to play, but he's expensive to build in terms of the gold, in terms of the black antimatter. But that's an example of the all defense. The reason why, I'll try to explain that really quickly. The reason why that happened is because Cable's all defense down applies much more quickly. You can see it's -1, stacks up to -55, but Cable has a lot of hits on his 4th skill. So each hit is adding -1%, but there's like 50 hits. So it will always, or almost always, get up to or around -50, whereas Weapon Hex, she also has, you know, she has -100, but it's only -2%, and she has fewer hits. I think she only has like 20 hits or less on her 4th skill. So that means that she's only going to be able to herself stack up to -40, which is still going to be less than Cable. And then Cable also had the help of Goliath stacking all defense down, which sort of combos, whereas Weapon Hex was alone dealing all defense down by herself. So it might have been the combo of Goliath and Cable rather than just Weapon Hex by herself. But that's a perfect example of being able to take advantage of when attacked strikers for characters that can heal, because they can take advantage of them without dying, not only because of his immunity, but also because of his heal. So overall, I think this character is, you know, above average in terms of value, in terms of power for the combat class, but definitely still undervalued and underpowered compared to other types. I don't think he's quite as good as Shadow Shell. I don't think he's as good as Blue Dragon. He might be as good as Sunbird. We're going to have to wait and see. But this is just an example of Marvel Future Fight devs continuing to struggle to properly build combat characters, because you have them making really great moves like Namor. He's like completely overpowered, but then you have them introducing characters who are just small upgrades. Like, I mean, Gorilla Man's really good compared to Jessica Jones and Hulkling and Iron Fist. Really good. Minerva and Molten Man are really good compared to the rest of the combat class. That's very true. Juggernaut's really good. Sabretooth's really good. Sabretooth got a really good uniform, but within the class, the new combat characters are amazing, great to amazing. Compared to the rest of the roster, they're average to great. They sort of drop off for the most part. There are some gems here like Namor and Sabretooth, but the rest of them, like Gorilla Man's good in the combat class, but within the rest of the roster, he's just slightly above average. So I still think they could do more for combat types. I definitely think they can tweak the numbers more. Just give combat types something more to make them unique. I think healing maybe is a start, to give more combat types healing, but I think it needs to go a little bit further than that. Maybe they need to introduce a new damage type and give that as an ability to combat types specifically. My suggestion would be Bleed. I think Bleed would be a really cool new damage type or new sort of status effect to introduce into Marvel Future Fight. And Bleed could do very low damage, but then when you stack up enough bleeds, it does like a chunk of damage all at once. Or something like that. That's just a crazy thought. By the way, for those of you wondering where to find that striker list that I was referring to with characters like, you know, Goliath and Phantom X and stuff like that, it's right over here, and you can find it on the Discord, which is completely free to join and completely free to just click on and find whenever you want under the helpful links text channel. So thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you think of War Tiger. Sunbird is up next, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.